Hello and thank you for joining us on Talking with Colerain Township. My name is Helen Tracy Noren and I am the communications specialist here for the township. Today we are marking a somber anniversary, the passing of Lieutenant Charles Palm from 1977. It's important for us to never forget a fallen firefighter. So today we are going to talk about his life and legacy with his two children. We have Chuck and his daughter Patricia, as well as Patricia's husband Roger Sauerwein. Roger and Patricia are actually both active in Colerain Township Fire and EMS today. So thank you all for joining me. So we're talking about the fire service and legacy and just a history of pride, especially in Colerain Township. So first, Chuck, let's start with you, with what you do now and why you got into your profession.
What I do now is enjoy life. But I got into the profession. I can remember as a child, Dad walking in the door with his turnout coat and his helmet on. Didn't know exactly what it was at the time, but I learned pretty quick what he had become. And he was very proud of what he did.
Can you talk a little bit about your dad and when he joined the fire service?
Well, I was 4 or 5 years old. It was 1966. They were all volunteers back then. You know, it was pretty neat as a kid. Dad had a red light and a siren on his car, and you know, it just it was impressed. I was impressed with that. You know, hey, look at me. You know, and you know, just the fact that he took us to the firehouse. You know, we got to do things with the guys. You know, every now and then I'd get to sneak in on a run with him because he'd go from home to the firehouse, grab the fire truck, then they'd go to the scene. And it's certainly not like it is today. I mean, it was different. I mean, these guys did it because they enjoyed it. And that's what impressed me most.
So how did that affect you and your career path later in life?
Well, I knew early on that's what I wanted. You know, I mean, you couldn't keep me away from the firehouse. When I was old enough, I'd get on my bike and I'd bike to the calls that I could reach, that I could go to. And I learned. I mean, I was there and I listened and I understood what was going on. And it just, I enjoyed what they did, and I wanted to be a part of that.
You hear that all the time from little kids. When I grow up, I want to be a firefighter. But there's actually a very small percentage of people who actually go into that service. But you achieved that dream.
Yeah, it took a while, you know, because I was 5, and well, I tell you what, I actually got in early. You know, I graduated high school in May of 1980, and I started recruit class in June that same year, but I was only 17. But the state, you could actually take the training, but you couldn't take the test until you were 18 years old. So I turned 18 in August, and I was hired in September of 1980.
That's wonderful.
So I got in. I was going to get in.
One way or another.
One way or the other. Yeah.
And Roger, you have a military background, but you're also in the fire service. You and Pat are actually some of the longest tenured Colerain Township employees for the fire department.
Yeah. Well, I went into the Marine Corps after high school in 68. Went to San Diego for boot camp. And after that, went to Vietnam. Was there for a year from December 69 to December 70, then came back and went on a med cruise and from Norfolk, Virginia, and came back. And I met my wife, Pat, through letters through my sister, who they worked together. And came back from leave, came home from leave, and my sister set up a blind date for us. And after that, was married in 3 months. And there was some tough times with his father because he was in the Navy, and anybody who was in the Marine Corps and Navy knows what I'm talking about. And when I finally got out of the service in 72. We came home in, was it July? Yeah, it was July. And I had a job lined up for me already at Ford Motor Company through my dad who worked there. And everything went pretty good, you know, and I missed being in the Marine Corps, being with people, and then I started talking to his dad about fire department, you know. So I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and try it. And that was September of 72. And it was a probation of 3 months. So after 3 months, I was told I could go in. That was 1972, and that was 50 years ago. Or 73. It was, 50 years ago this month. So
Wow.
that's pretty much, and you know, the reason why I went into fire service is because of the camaraderie of I had in the Marine Corps with a certain amount of guys, and then after doing that in the fire service, that's the same feeling that I got, that we depended on certain people doing their job, and it was a good time, and it still is, but I don't really get to do that much anymore because we let the younger guys do it now.
Give them a turn.
Yeah.
So Roger has said that your dad was very unique individual. Pat, what are some of your memories of your dad? How would you describe him to someone who never met him?
He could be a little jokester at times. In fact, they still think he's joking, or they used to at one of the stations even after he passed, because they claimed he was still there and leaving doors open on the units or shutting them, because we would leave them open, he would always shut them. But he was very kind. He'd be the first one out the door to help someone, and that's what impressed me so much and influenced me.
And you've said before that he's a main reason why you got into fire service too, and particularly with the focus of CPR and all of that. I'm sure he'd be very proud.
I think he would be. He would be very proud of all his children. But yeah, he was the big influence. I mean, when he passed, I know that everybody there at the time when he had his heart attack did everything they could. Training was limited back then. They didn't have the skills that we have now on our units. And when I got on the department, which was later, I could see, and I wanted to give lay people, the opportunity to maintain blood flow, CPR, to a loved one until they could get there. And that's why I started doing teaching.
That's wonderful. Chuck, do you remember the day you got the call that your dad had passed?
Yeah. They were still pretty much volunteer. I was in high school. I was at school. And sitting in class, and principal came in and asked me to come out and said, your dad's not feeling well. And there was another firefighter there. He came to the school and he was in his own car. And got in his car, and we went from Northwest High School to then Providence Hospital. And he went lights and sirens. Wouldn't say anything to me. Just drove as fast as he could. And when we got to the hospital, I saw the squad there, and I saw a good friend of Dad's, also on the fire department, standing in front of the squad crying. And I knew this is not going to be a good thing. And got into the hospital, and Mom was there and said, Dad is gone. But yeah, I was in school, and they did what they could. I mean, he was at a fire scene, and he started feeling bad, and they had him in the squad, and he went out as they were transporting him. they couldn't do anything. It was a long day.
I can't even imagine. That sense that it seems like Colerain Township just tried to honor his memory and tries to take the lessons from the past and move into the future. Pat was talking a little bit about how they still think he's kind of hanging around the fire stations. What do you feel about that?
I don't know about that, but I would have to say that over the years that I was there, I think he was looking down. I think he was there just keeping an eye out, making sure we did everything right. Yeah, I think he still does.
Professionally, what values do you feel like your dad has instilled in both of you? And really, I mean, Roger, since you knew him as well, is there anything where you're like, oh yeah, that's classic dad?
Installing stuff into me, it was just having fun at the firehouse when we weren't doing anything. We'd always have a meeting every week, and just doing funny things. But when the bell went off, it was a different story. Everybody just jumped on the truck, and we did things on the truck that we don't allow to do anymore. I mean, we rode on the back of the tailgate, on the tailbed of the truck, and trying to get dressed and everything. And it was
Dangerous.
but we were young and ready to go, But
That's the way you did things.
That's the
back
way
then.
we did things back then, and he was.
He was all fun and games.
He was just. He had a good time. He was funny and he smiled all the time. But if you messed up, it was right now. He would tell you what you did wrong. But yeah, it was. I loved the guy, but I loved to tease him too, and because of the things that I only got to know him. I think it was 8 years. 8 years I got to know the guy, but it was, yeah, it was fun.
How about for you, Pat?
He taught me a lot of things, and devotion, to be there when somebody else is hurting. Sometimes we have a bad run, and you want to be there for the ones that are hurting because they couldn't. For me, for example, when pediatric runs are always tough. Being a mother, being a grandmother, if the situation didn't come out right, you go back to the station and you talk. Or you didn't talk, but they were there if you wanted to. And I learned that from them.
I don't know, but I understand that Dad was a storyteller.
Oh,
He would sometimes elaborate a little bit, maybe stretch the truth. But you never knew when he was telling the truth and when he was telling a story.
that's where
And
he got it from.
apparently, I'm a lot like that. I don't see it, but yeah, I would go to work. I would do my job. I would enjoy the guys and camaraderie. But storytelling, that's not me.
It's okay. You won't tell anybody.
But if that's what they want to believe, that's what I got from my father. So
Sense of devotion, sense of service, and keen eye for stories.
And the White Castle coffee carried down.
oh geez.
Oh yeah.
What is that?
Well, when I would come back from squad run with him, the first thing that we would have to do before we got back to the station was stop at White Castle, get coffee. He was a coffee drinker.
Heavy cream, heavy sugar.
He was a coffee drinker. Every time you see I don't remember him ever taking a drink of beer or anything like that, but he always had coffee. He was a coffee guy. I mean, Yeah, that was the first thing we would do, stop and get White Castle coffee.
Coming back from the hospital
Coming from
downtown,
back to
Knowlton's
hospital,
Corner
yep.
and North Side.
Yep. Yeah,
That was the place to be.
in the dead of winter, he'd have his window down,
Oh, gosh.
and I gotta have the heater on me. He's the same way.
Okay, maybe there's two things.
Because I holler at him when we're out, he's got the window down. I said, can you turn the window up? So, yeah. He's just like his dad. He is.
Yes, he is.
It's a good thing, but I tease him about it.
With the anniversary of his passing having just happened, is there something that you guys do as a family to honor him? Or something that you like to pass down to your kids or grandkids?
We always,
We go to the gravesite, and
and because he passed right after Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And he was a big Christmas person. And he loved his live Christmas trees. And so I mean, there's been a couple years with COVID and that I didn't get there, but we usually try to get a tree on the grave.
That's sweet.
Just make sure everybody remembers. And the guys at the firehouse, I mean, they really take care of all of the fallen. Dad, the holidays, Memorial Day, Robin and Brian, who passed a few years back, they take care of the people just so well. I mean, flags and flowers and dedications. Arlington has the flags that they put out. They put one in honor of our fallen. And it's
All of
just
them.
nice, and we remember. I mean, we're never going to forget. But it's nice that others remember the same. And, we've got the memorial next to Station 25 on Springdale. They've got bricks up there at Northgate, in the Colerain Township area. It's just things like that we drive by just because, it's Dad. So
How does that support affect you as the family too? What is all that outpouring of love and just being there for you really mean?
Everything. Everything. I mean, even when a new group of kids, they're kids to me, come in, and then I think they still tell them about Robin, Brian, and Dad. And this is where it came from. I mean, Dad was part of Dunlap, and which merged and helped to build Colerain Township Fire Department.
I mean, they even go back as far as Western Home, where we lost the 2 firefighters. I mean, you don't forget any of them, It's just something we want to make sure they know about and hopefully remember and just honor them, because you never know. Any day.
You never thought about that football player going down on the field. You never know what can happen.
Yeah. Hold your loved ones close.
Yes,
Very much.
very close.
yeah.
And make sure you tell them you love them every day.
Our daughter won't let us forget about him either. Every time, it's his birthday or whatever, on Facebook, she'll put
She's
something
always
on
pictures.
on pictures or something like that on Facebook, and But yeah, she's a good kid about that. She was the one when he passed. She was sitting on her bed when we got home, and Pat heard her talking in the bedroom, and she went in and asked her, said, "Who are you talking to?" She said, "Papa."
He wants to make sure I'm being a good girl.
Yeah. And ever since then, she's been really good about that.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
It's funny how kids seem to be closer to things like that, and they have that unconditional love even even through it.
Yeah. I think she was only like 4, maybe 5.
No, Alan
No.
was 5 because he
Yeah.
was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
She was 3,
Yeah,
3 or 4.
yeah.
But she was just sitting on her bed having a conversation, and no one was there. Who are you talking to? Papa.
Now, if she would have asked for a White Castle coffee, then maybe.
I don't think she's got the taste for White Castle coffee. But
Yeah, that would have clinched it.
Yeah.
You're talking to Dad.
Aside from some of his funny quirks like that, do you have favorite memories of him? You said the turnout coat was a big one, and just his sense of being a practical jokester. And is there
Yeah.
an instance, a family vacation, or
I never went on vacation with him, but the thing that really always, when I think of him, stands out. He's got his silver coat, which was made out of rubber. That's how they were back then. It would have his silver metal helmet on, cockeyed, and a cigarette. Those are the 3 things that I picture, because he never could put his hat on straight. It was always crooked.
Even in his, when
And I think that came from the Navy, because they always had their hat crooked.
I got pictures of him in his Navy uniform.
The hat's always crooked, and the hat was always crooked. It was always tilted to the right, and those are the 3 images that I see of him all the time when I think of him. Those 3.
how about for you, Pat?
Actually, I can even go back before he was born when we lived up in Lima, Ohio. Like I said, he helped people. And we had some elderly people up on Flanders, and it snowed up there. I mean, we had some, and he would shovel this driveway, this sidewalk, all the way past those older people's homes so they could get out and do, and I remember him doing that. I remember him doing that for them. Wouldn't tell them he was doing it, he just did it.
Just doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing, and he's been doing it ever since.
How about for you, Chuck?
Well, I was a typical teenager. I didn't want to do anything with my parents. I mean, I wanted long hair, he wanted short hair. You know, now he's gone, I got short hair and a beard. He would not love this.
he would
I
not.
can tell
No.
you what, he would not love that at all. But no, I know that he preferred EMS. Dad started the light squad after he joined Dunlap, and it was not really a light squad. It was
It was a load and carry.
but it was a funeral home that would transport, and they would call the funeral home to pick up the patient, and he would call Dad to meet him there, and they would together, and it was just basic first aid at the time. But he loved driving the light squad, loving just going out, you know. I'm, on the other hand, I like the fire aspect more, you know. She is like Dad, she was EMS. But I just know when he started that, he was always on the squad, and he loved it. You know, he'd come home from working 3rd shift at the railroad. He'd lay on the couch, try to get some sleep, but in between sleep, he'd make runs. Drive to the firehouse, pick up the squad, and go to the call. And he did that all day. And never bothered him.
And go to work that night.
And then he'd go back to work that night.
Yep, I did the same thing, yep.
He one of those have the radio by his head at all times?
Electron.
Like-
Well, we
Electron.
always had to have that, yes.
Yeah, it was a box that you plugged into the house, and it would activate and tell them what was going on. So if you were on squad, you couldn't go anywhere. You had to stay
You
home
had to stay home.
for the
Yeah,
longest
we didn't
time.
have the portable radios that we carried with us. If you was on squad, I mean, we couldn't go anywhere. Yeah, just like you said, we had to stay home and wait for the plectron to go off.
Because you never knew.
Yeah, it wasn't until the 80s.
Yeah, 80s, yeah.
We got pagers. That way we can go out and do things, make the call from Yeah, that was, but he loved it. No sleep, he just never bothered him.
And never bothered him. He never complained. I mean, it was something he wanted to do. He wanted to do it for the neighbors, the friends. I mean, he was always there for the neighborhood.
If you think your dad could give advice to the future generation of firefighters and EMS workers, what do you think he would tell them?
Do your
Patient care.
training. Do your training. Know what you're doing. Be responsible.
Do your job.
Yeah.
Somebody's life may depend on what you do, so do it right.
Yeah, he was a stickler on doing it right. You did make sure you did it right, you know. But yeah. He took some chances himself, but that was what we did back then.
Part of the job then.
Yeah, part of the job, yes, it was.
But the mistakes that were made went into future training for future firefighters.
Can you talk about some of those a little bit? Or what?
Robin and Brian,
Well,
the
What-
360.
Or how the training has changed?
since from Dad,
Yeah.
Ooh,
well, I don't,
Or there's too much change really to talk about.
There's a
all
lot
of
of-
it.
there's a
I mean,
lot of
there's so
change.
much.
I
I mean,
mean-
it's like a new fire department altogether with the continuous training. They have training now on station during shifts, and that where it was once a week back in the days, once a week. And then it wasn't mandatory all the time for them to show up then.
it was
Now-
volunteer.
It was
it was volunteer. We got paid $1 a year.
Really?
Yeah, got paid $1 a year. Excuse me. And it went back into the kitty.
It was for insurance purposes. They had to pay them the $1, and then they donated it back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Big money back then.
It was
Yeah.
something you had to love to do it, because you didn't get reimbursed for anything.
Training back then was, I would say, it was learn how to pull the hose off the truck,
Raise a ladder.
raise a ladder, especially the old banger ladders we used to have. Those were something. They were dangerous. But and then if we have a fire training, there would be an old house that we would get and just burn it down, and try and put it out, you know,
And relight it,
and relight it. It was,
put it out, relight it for
And-
different scenarios.
And I remember back when I first started, wearing an air pack was
Optional.
optional. It was the last thing that we ever did. I remember going in when it was smoky as heck, and you'd come home, and I told my wife one night, I said, "Man, I'm not feeling well," you know. And I think it was because we carried out a mattress out of the house that was still smoldering, and I think it was
Chemicals.
CO that I got, the chemicals. that was in
Chemicals,
there.
when
Yeah,
certain
was-
things burn, they can be toxic.
But yeah, those things,
You didn't do it.
you didn't do it. I mean, that's how the old days they did it back then. They never had those kind of things.
Just don't do it now.
And-
Wearing all your turnout gear
Yeah,
back
it
then.
was-
You know, some guys would wear gloves, some wouldn't. I got a picture of Dad at home at a fire at Rumpke. He's got his helmet on, his coat's open, barehanded, you know, with the line in his hand.
Yeah.
That's what you did.
That's what we did. I mean, it was,
They don't do that
when I
anymore.
think back at that, and I said, man, how in the heck do we get out of here? You know, so.
It's
yeah.
like bare knuckle baseball, right?
But now, like she said, that's no.
No,
You
but-
come off,
You
you're in
got
full gear, you're breathing air, you know, and you've got somebody outside watching in command, and if he sees things going wrong, you're coming out. You're done. You know, we'll take care of it from out here. Back then,
It was pretty much on the job training, pretty much.
yeah,
Man.
Yeah,
36 hours, I think, is what
Yeah.
what you had to have.
Yeah.
That's it.
for the whole
then.
year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Now it's every day.
Every day. You all have said that fire service is something you have to love to do.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think you would have still been called to be firefighters, paramedics, had it not been for your dad?
Oh, shoot. I don't know, but I know personally, if I hadn't met her, I probably would have stayed in the Marine Corps. I would, because I was up 4 years to ship over, and I was going to Europe. But then I was married and had a child, and she says, I ain't going to Germany. So that's when my dad told me I got a job at Ford if you get out. So.
And when I was in high school, I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to go into the nursing profession and was told by counselors and that you don't have what it takes. They said take it shorthand, typing, accounting, which I did, and started working for Stearns and Foster in the accounting department. Regretted it, hated it. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. So when things happened, I went back to paramedic school at age 40. Didn't know if I could do it. 40 years old, and you still have the learning skills you had when you were in high school. Mm-hmm. But I did it. And if it wasn't for Dad, I probably wouldn't have even tried.
My first memory is Dad. I can't go back any further, so I would have to say, I don't know. That's all I had growing up was the fire service. That's all I remember. I remember nothing before that. So, yeah, I would have been a firefighter.
What are some things that you each love about the fire service? You talked about the camaraderie, about helping people. You know, we hear that a lot, especially from firefighters. They love to help people, so that's why they got into it.
Yep.
But a job that's so high risk, too. I mean, you could be a nurse and still help people. You can be a teacher and still help people. Why do you feel like it's important for people to go in the fire service? Why do you love the fire service?
You mentioned about everything that's right there. I mean, it's just being with the guys, doing stuff, sitting down for a dinner that they would make at the firehouse, and just, well, I was going to say something else, but.
That sense of fraternity.
But yeah, just joking around at the table when you know, that's how you released what you did that day. If it was something that was.
If you didn't, you'd go crazy.
Yeah, you
would have mental issues.
You had to. The things that we would do in the evening
see.
and stuff.
And what you
know,
see.
That's a way that we released the tension that we had if it was a bad day or we had problems or something. In the evening, it was pretty much our time until, of course, when the bells went off again. But yeah, there was some good times back then. Yeah.
One of the things that I think of is one of the first years I was on the department. We got a run for a teenager, had tonsils removed, and she was told not to smoke, but she did, coughed, and started hemorrhaging. Well, by the time we got there, she was in PEA. She had a pulse, but she had no blood volume 2, and fortunately, she lived a hop, skip, and a jump from Providence Hospital, started 2 IV lines on her, got her to the hospital, and she survived. A couple years later, and I think I've told you this, in my mailbox at the firehouse at headquarters, there was a graduation notice. And on there it was written, if it wasn't for you, my daughter would not be graduating. Made me feel real good.
And you saved someone's baby.
Mm-hmm.
That's been many years ago. She probably has kids of her own now. Grandkids, maybe. So yeah, it's that they appreciate what we do for them too. That makes it worthwhile.
And we get a lot of cards. I noticed that guys they're getting some kind of thank you card or something like that. Even on Facebook, they'll come on and put things on. that you see. So, yeah, they, you know, if you're not the recipient of what we do, people don't know what we do. That's why we had the CFA.
Yep.
Get people in and see what we do.
Yep, Citizens Fire Academy.
Yeah.
Always important to give people an inside look at some of the equipment you use, some of the procedures you do, and
Yep.
how you help.
Yeah, you're firsthand at that now, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm very proud CFA alum.
I wouldn't have changed my life at all, what I did. And I still want to do it to this day. I'd like to do a lot more, but because of age and I can still teach people to help others though.
Which is just as important.
Oh, you
If
wouldn't
not-
believe the
if
phone
not
calls.
more so,
Yeah.
really, because if the next generation doesn't know what they're doing, may as well be back at volunteer days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
you don't want that.
You don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, it was on the news yesterday, and she sees it, I see it. Since the incident at Paycor Stadium, we've gotten a lot of phone calls for people wanting to do CPR.
Oh, I
It's,
talked to you the other day and I
Yeah.
told you it's tripled,
yeah, it's a lot.
the emails and phone calls I've been getting. So,
That's wonderful. And if people do want to learn how to take CPR, they can just go to colerain.org, right? And go on the fire's website and
Yes,
sign
they
up
can.
for classes. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you that you feel like is important to address or talk about, whether it's your father's memory or the Colerain Township Fire Department or just the fire service in general?
Well, we'd just
Yep.
like to
Yep.
thank you for letting us come in and tell our story.
Yep, thanks.
And for listening to everything.
Thank you all for your service
Thank you.
to the community and to Colerain Township. And we'll see you next time, Colerain.